Oh, stop speaking because the camera started. So, hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, I think, where you are, Pat.
It is good morning where I am, yeah.
It is. I should get these things right. Welcome to Print Island and welcome to the Lighthouse. My name is Richard Askham. I am the Lighthouse Keeper. And I am here to talk to all of my guests, really, about their 360-degree view of the print industry. And I can think of nobody better to share the next 30 minutes with than my good friend, Pat McGrew. Good morning, Pat.
Hello, Richard. Yeah, you caught me at home, which is kind of weirdly rare, but I am absolutely in the mountain time zone of the US, enjoying a bright, sunshiny morning with bright blue skies.
Lovely. Well, that sounds fabulous. And I was trying to think before we came on, actually, Pat, I can't remember where you and I first met. I know it was like about 100 years ago, but I can't remember where. You and I have done so many things together over the last few years. Have you got any
We
idea?
have. And I think that it's Morton's fault.
It's always Morton's fault.
Well, so many things are, but I think it's Morton's fault because I think that while we had been circling each other and following each other, I think that we actually met in person at an Inkish shindig
You might be right. I seem to remember, I have a very clear
because we were
memory of.
talking about personalized soccer balls.
That's right. Do you know what? I tell you where it was, Copenhagen. And
There you go.
we were, there you go. We were, so for those of you that don't know, Morten Reitoft, very clever man, Inkish,
Yeah.
invited Pat and myself over to Copenhagen, where he lives in Denmark, nearly at Christmas time. And we had a lovely evening, as I remember,
We
with his
did. We
family.
were the pilots for what later became known as the non-event.
The non-event. Yeah, we were the first. There you go, the
We were
pioneers
it.
of the
It,
non-event.
it
Yeah.
was a dinner at Christmas dinner at Morton's house.
Yep,
His
which was
his
lovely.
Nina and his family were lovely and accommodating,
Yep,
and we spent some time recording a bunch and live
there you go.
streaming when people didn't know what that was,
Yes,
and
exactly.
we were. I
Well,
think
this
we blame Morton.
we do, and as I found out last week, BC no longer stands for what it used to stand for. It now stands for before COVID. This was in the
Yeah,
years BC, Pat. But
it
since
was.
then,
Yeah.
and I was with you last year at Drupal,
Yeah.
doing some stuff again with Morton. There's an elephant in the room here. We keep mentioning him,
Always, always.
but it's genuinely I've loved spending time with you, whether we've been recording, working, or just sitting on a train chatting. I think it's wonderful to be able to meet somebody who shares similar sort of view of the world as me, and you've been really in the industry for, well, you tell people what you've done in the industry over the years.
So, I keep being asked how long, and if I am really honest, it goes back to when I was 15 and 16,
Okay.
working in a print shop that had been in business from the 1700s, which is not very long if you're European, but if you are in the US, that's a long time, right?
That's
And
history. Yeah.
the local newspaper printed our junior high paper, and I was one of the editors, and also our high school paper, of which I was one of the editors when I moved there. And they offered an opportunity for some after school work to help them initially with just silly stuff, right? Helping categorize stacks of newspapers for delivery, running an addressograph to address newspapers, and later spotting rubylith and setting type and learning how to run the smaller presses. And over time, then we got our first photo typesetter. We got our CompuGraphics and our Linetrons, and I learned how to do all that before I left high school.
There you go.
And so when I went to college, instead of having to flip hamburgers and work jobs like that, I went to work as an overnight typographer, which
Wow.
paid way better. And I had to work way fewer hours to make ends meet and still go to school and complete my classwork, which kept me involved. And then I detoured through TV news for a while because my degree was journalism. My plan was
Hmm.
to become a TV news reporter. But then, life has a way of turning you a little bit. And the politics in TV news are really quite intense. And so you go to school and they teach you all about who, what, where, when, how, why. Be neutral. You know your opinion never gets into your news. And then I went to work for a TV station that didn't play by those rules. So I did another left turn and I went into magazine editing,
Okay.
and did that for a while. And then uh, through a friend found out about a job in technical writing and ended up writing oil equipment manuals for an oil field supplier. It was a Gardner Denver Cooper then, and slowly wiggled my way then over to more business systems where I was writing manuals for the very early computer based business systems when a 10 megabyte hard drive was, giant. Um, then wiggled from there into a disaster recovery role for Mobil Oil and built their SOPs for disaster recovery. Learned all
Wow.
about real tapes in salt mines in Kansas. That was fun. Then, but there I cut my teeth using IBM's document composition facility for composition. And we had some of the first high speed toner web fed presses, the IBM 3800s.
Okay.
And from there, I ended up at a company called Image Sciences, where we built the first variable data programs for the insurance industry.
Wow.
So it used to be when you got an insurance policy, they had people on roller skates pulling individual pages to assemble your policy that had been printed offset, and then it would get fed into a printer that was basically a dot matrix or an impact printer that would put your personal details into it from some other program, or it would get assembled and you would fill it out by hand, which was even more fun.
The
So
good old
our
days.
our system was built to support both Xerox and IBM, which spoke two different languages at the time, right?
Hmm.
So we had to as well. I learned more about VSAM KSDS databases than I ever wanted to know, as well as CICS and DB2 and all manner of other things. And I did a detour from there through a company that did shop floor control systems. So I learned a lot about shop floor control systems. So out of all that experience, and going to a lot of trade shows and user group meetings, the person who was our director of R&D at Image Sciences and I ended up being asked to write a book in the IBM data series
Okay.
about how to use mainframes to produce variable data content in the enterprise. And we did. We wrote in house publishing in a mainframe environment. But then little light bulbs went off, right? And as they do. And the company we were working for was not interested in our little light bulbs. It happens. So
Yeah.
we spun ourselves off with nothing but a handful of credit cards and one contract to create high speed printer data stream software. So we built software that could take IBM stuff, turn it into Xerox stuff, and turn it into IBM stuff. And the whole idea was that it had to be light table accurate because in the enterprise, a lot of your documents are regulated by governmental authorities that
Okay.
want that period to be in the same place no matter how it was produced, right? So we perfected that. John Warnock found us, and he was building PDF at what was pre-PDF at the time, and said to us, "Hey, I want to make sure this works in the enterprise too. You people seem to know how to do this." So we ended up working with Adobe to make sure that we could take IBM output into PDF as well as Xerox. And along the way, IBM was changing their file formats. They were standardizing and normalizing around a print database they called AFP, Advanced Function Printing at the time, now Advanced Function Presentation. And Xerox was in Metacode land at that time, which was a quite entertaining sequence. But they came to us and asked if we could also work with their escape sequence driven thing called UDK, user defined key. So that taught us a lot about how to also work with HPPCL. So we became the go to for all the people doing, wait for it, optical disk archiving,
Wow.
because they needed to be able to take files and put them onto these giant plates optical disc systems, because those were the original, those were the more compact way to do archiving, legal archiving, than putting it on a bunch of hard drives. So
Okay.
we were their go-to folks for that. And then eventually printing companies that didn't want to be held hostage to one or the other vendor came to us and asked about transforming one to the other, or back and forth. And then as PDF became more popular, no one was going to change their healthcare or policy issue system. So they wanted to be able to transform what they were producing in PDF because it was considered friendlier to print or to display. We ended up producing systems that could go to HTML. So we did that up until, just about 2000. My partner at that point decided he never wanted to talk to another programmer ever again because he was done. He had had way too much fun. So we ended up selling the company to one of our distributors in Canada. And that code changed hands several times, and it now sits at OpenText.
Wow.
Right? So it's
Blimey.
still there, right? But then after we sold the company, it's like, oh, well, now what? Right? So we did a lot of consulting and a lot of speaking around the world.
Hmm.
But eventually, and through that, I was working at InfoTrends. I knew the InfoTrends pretty well, and folks pretty well. It's what's Key Point Intelligence now. They
Hmm.
didn't have a transaction bench, an enterprise bench, and they were getting asked to do it. So I ended up doing a bunch of work with them sort of on the side as a consultant. But then eventually they asked me to work on a project for Pitney Bowes, which I did. We developed a strategy for them for first for Europe, and then Pitney asked me to come on board and help execute it. So I did. So I worked for Pitney for a few years, executing document strategies and mostly around their campus based enterprise solutions. But then they changed their directions. And one of the people I'd worked for at Kodak had gone, or at InfoTrends had gone to Kodak and asked me if I wanted to change the world. Richard, what do you do when someone asks if you want to change the world?
Well, normally I always say, well, I thought I already had, but go on.
Yeah. So I got that. Well, that sounds like fun. So he said, look, I got somebody for the US. Can you do the rest of the world? So that began a really the next 15 years of running around the world, finding cool print things in one place, taking to another place. But my actual job, though they could never put it in the job description, was to keep people from returning presses. Because in the beginning at Kodak, we were printing with what was gloriously called water. It was business color. We were printing with watercolor, right?
Okay.
And that's not really a commercial application, right? You're not going to do your direct mail at that point. You're not going to print your
Not so
posters in
much.
watercolor. So we targeted transaction, and we cut our teeth in Australia.
Okay.
We Australia, Singapore, Taiwan, Japan. Our biggest initial installation was in Japan for the folks at Topan doing the NTT telephone bills because
Okay.
they wanted to add marketing content to them,
Yeah.
and oddly, I knew about that. So we started. We had a really interesting run at Kodak, trying to convince the world that it was okay to print some color, even if it wasn't brilliant color, uh, to kind of lift your brand. And so we sold to an awful lot of the bank printers, an awful lot of the PSPs that catered to like your store credit card
Hmm.
or loyalty statements and things like that. And over time, then, Ricoh introduced their inkjet press, and then Canonose introduced their inkjet press, which actually made the world better for all of us because when we were the only one, people were afraid of it. But when other
Yeah.
people came into the market with inkjet,
Yeah.
it became
It,
okay.
it
So
validates it, doesn't it?
yeah, I got to leverage all my offset history and my understanding of marketing and my understanding of how to do variable content, not just variable plug in and name, but
Yeah.
actually use data to trigger changing images in the variable content. So I did that for Kodak for a while, then HP for a while. 2016 Drupa. HP had changed their rules about remote workers. They've since gone back to the old plan, but it's too late for me. So the last day of Drupa 2016 was my last day at HP,
Hmm.
and it was also my first day back at InfoTrends. because they had an issue where their workflow practice had kind of waned a bit and needed some help. So I went back to work, and along with Ryan McAbee, we rebuilt the workflow practice. And then we took on the customer communication management practice, and we took on the special projects practice, and we took on kind of everything until COVID, right? And then companies like InfoTrends and Keypoint Intelligence, nobody knew what was going to happen. They assumed nobody was going to be hiring them to do anything, so they let a lot of the senior people go. I was one of them. So I hung my shingle out, and I've been working for pretty much everybody ever since, because I don't do the same thing for any two companies, because no two companies know me the same way.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I can do a font project for one company. I can do a strategy project for another company. I can help another company that wants to do product triage, where they've got a product, but they're starting to see it not sell as well, and they're not quite sure why. That's where I will say we a lot, because Ryan McAbee also left Keypoint Intelligence, and we're independent companies, but we still do projects together a lot. And so we are, between us, there's probably nothing we haven't seen. And so we can go in and look and bring you back ideas on how to take your skill sets and turn them in a slightly different direction, serve a different market, tell a slightly different story. But storytelling is what we do for a living, right?
Exactly.
As well as helping people figure out how to solve. I tell people call us as the last resort. When they've talked to their consultants, they've talked to their internal people, they don't believe what they're hearing, or nobody is offering a solution, I'll get a ping, like on LinkedIn, or I'll get an email or a phone call. Hey, we have this problem, and you know a lot of weird stuff. Any chance you might be able to help us with it? And the answer is usually yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Oddly, yes. So that's sort of it. It's how we ended up sitting in Copenhagen together having strange conversations, because
there you go.
You meet other people like you along the way. And I had met Morton years before, wandering around Graph Expo. And it was, again, a coffee, and we realized that we were kind of thinking the same strange thoughts and annoyed about the same strange things, right? And it was kind of like when we've talked, it's like, why does the industry do that, right? You wind up building a network of people, one, that you can call on when somebody poses something to you you've never heard of and you have no idea what they're talking about, but also a network of people you can rant with occasionally. Right?
It's not a bad thing. Yeah, that's not a bad thing.
You need to blow off steam sometimes, so you don't do it with a client. So you reach out to one of your friends is similarly inclined.
Very good. Go. Yeah, I see what you did there. And what's fascinating for me, Pat, first and foremost, that's the longest answer to a question I've ever had. So thank you.
And I'm sorry.
But
it's just been a weird 40 years.
No, don't be sorry, because that's the point. You have this wonderful wiggly, squiggly line that you described there for the last however many years.
Yeah.
But what I hear in there is a constant reference, really, to you got ink on your fingers as a young girl, and it never left.
Yeah.
And you're a writer, which is your passion.
By trade. That's what I was trained to do.
By trade, but also by heart, and that's so evident when you speak about it so eloquently, but so fondly. It's quite unique, I think, in any industry to find somebody that has done as many different things as you, but actually all attached to that same meridian, which is, I want to write about that. That's interesting. I want to write
5 books under my name and a bunch ghostwritten.
There you go.
Right. And then a lot of articles, because if I don't write about it, writing about things helps me make it more concrete.
Yeah.
But it also gives me a reference history. So I find that a lot of times when Ryan and I are talking about the things that we want to write for the different publications that we work with, I'll go back into something I might have written 10 years ago. And the question we'll ask is this still a problem? Almost always still is.
Yeah, probably. Or a version of it.
And the solutions have changed. The opportunity to make things better has changed. But the problems that we were talking about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, even 30 years ago, or that Ryan and I were trying to solve when we were at Key Point, they really haven't changed, because printers are a vast group of people with a vast array of experiences and a vast array of stubbornness.
Yeah.
So oftentimes, even when they're, all their friends and their peers are solving problems, they may choose not to, because they're sure that they've built a better mousetrap.
Well,
But
that's
then maybe there's a generational change, maybe the market they're serving changes, and all of a sudden they're sitting there and they're not as well positioned as maybe some of their peers who have laid some other infrastructure in. And that's
sure.
where we can come in and help as well.
And that's a classic. My father always used to call this an elegant death, when your business is tapering away, but you don't notice it. And I think, and it's not unique to the print
And you
industry.
don't believe your friends who are telling you,
Exactly.
because they don't know your business the way you do.
Well, there's that, but I think you cling, as humans, we cling to our own
Yeah.
decisions because they were our decisions, and we have to defend them, because otherwise
Yeah.
we're basically admitting we were wrong, and none of us like
It's
doing
true.
that.
Yeah.
But you hear that expression, and I bet you hear it weekly. Well, that's the way we've always done it.
Always done.
And
Oh, I hate those words, but for me, they're always an opportunity, because I can almost always demonstrate that it's not the way you've always done it. It's the way you think you've always done it.
that's
You
very
have
true.
made changes. You're just not, you're not documenting the fact that you made changes. You're not registering the fact that you made changes.
And those changes, Pat, are often quite small, quite incremental. It's a little bit like watching other people's children grow up. You notice, but the parent doesn't.
Yeah.
And I think as the industry has accelerated over, and really since COVID, there's been a significant acceleration. And I'm really interested to get your thoughts on it. But just before we jump into that,
Yeah.
you in the time that you've been in the industry, you mentioned a number there. I'm not going to repeat it, but you have seen, really innovation come, or not full circle, because that suggests that it's back at the beginning, but so far from
Oh, yeah.
those early days. You mentioned typesetting, and the
Oh,
uppercase
yeah.
and the lowercase and all that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And the print industry has a fondness, a little bit like the motor industry, has a fondness for its past. And when you are so fond of the past, it's quite hard to drag yourself into the future. What have you seen in your working life where not specific companies, but just specific ideas that have almost been held back by that lack of desire to move forward?
If you think about, we talk about variable data printing, and we kind of toss it off casually as VDP. In the beginning, there was some question as to whether it was even legal. And even like, were printer data streams, data stream transforms, were they legal? Was having a computer compose something legal?
Mm.
Because there was this sense that a person could change something. Now, the fact that you could have done it when you were laying type out of a California case, you could have changed it there too, and people did. But there have always been legal questions every step of the way. And I think that, especially as we were going through Y2K, right?
Mm.
And for those of you of another generation, Y2K is that time when we went from 1999 to the year 2000. And there was a belief among many, a misguided belief, that all the computers in the world were going to shut down,
Yeah.
because there were boundary conditions in the code, and it wouldn't know how to go from 1999 to 2000, and ATMs were going to stop, and people went and were pulling money out of the bank. Enterprises were spending just millions and millions on trying to ensure that their systems were going to cross that boundary, right?
Yeah.
So that actually, that boundary, that whole Y2K thing, killed a lot of innovation.
Mm.
Because for the couple of years going into 2000, instead of embracing some of the ideas of relational databases to hold content, to drive better communication, to build better databases of our customer data so we could know our customer better, which was a big talk track in 95, 96, 97, a
Mm-hmm.
long time ago, I know. But but think about it, it's a conversation we're still having today.
Yeah,
What
yeah, yeah.
happened is that all that stopped. And so if you go back and you look at the record, you'll find that multi-million-dollar consulting projects to standardize customer communication, which were all the rage in the mid 90s, stopped dead as everybody panicked over getting over the, January 1, 2000 hump. So we just about got over that hump, and we were just about firing up that innovation again to try and reconsider how we were maintaining data about the communicate that was going to inform the communication that we needed, whether it was transactional bills and statements, whether it was marketing mail, whether it was even just, commercial mail. We just about got over it. And I know that at InfoTrends, I can remember writing a white paper about how transaction documents were going to never be printed again by the end of the decade. Missed that one. But I wasn't alone. Frank Romano was writing that. A lot of people were writing that. But oh wow, now that we can email things, because email had kind of gotten out of its new era, right? The internet was kind of, when I started out, there was no internet, and then all of a sudden there was an internet, and then there you go, right? And so we started having these different kinds of conversations, and then 9/11 happened. Well, then for the next 3-4 years, nothing happened. So innovation just stopped. We weren't spending money on direct mail marketing. We weren't spending money on figuring out how to do that better. We weren't figuring out how to interrogate databases to know our customers better. And I can remember one of the first big projects I got sent to work on was in Australia. We had put a press there, and we didn't want that press to come back to us. We wanted them to be printing nonstop, right? And one of the conversations was with a large enterprise environment, and we said to them, well, look, here's this pilot that's been done for you by this very smart printing company, showing how if you know your customer better, your customer can get this much better return on their marketing communication. It was all around retirement accounts and wealth management. And all of a sudden, change it to being full color and being age appropriate to the person you're trying to communicate to, so that the images that got pulled for use in the communication were age appropriate, right, to the age of the recipient. And they loved it, and they loved it. And then they said, yeah, we'd really love to do it, but we didn't ever fix our databases, and we have 83 of them. And 83 customer databases, each has data about every one of our customers in it, and they don't all agree. And so sometimes this one gets updated, and sometimes because departments, and we bought these companies, and so literally that whole project went on hold for 5 years while they tried to put in a relational database to normalize their own data. That's the story of 2003 to 2010. And then we had another recession in the middle of all that. So innovation didn't go so if you look at where big leaps were, inkjet was a big leap in the production print industry. It was widely accepted in wide format. The whole rise of wide format roll printers happens because of inkjet and because of UV inks and the ability to print on vinyls and textiles and everything else. And all those things, kept carrying on, and big pieces of the industry grew. But on the production print side and the book printing side, which are two very big pieces of print, we kind of kept getting stalled, and innovation kind of came in fits and starts. And we're sitting here in 2025, Richard, and I'm still talking to people about how to do variable data. And what they need to put into they all want to use AI. Oh, well, can't AI write my marketing for me? Can't AI fix my customer database? Can't AI tell me about my customers? Yeah, it can. What data are you going to feed it? And if you as a printer have not been working with your customers to make sure that their data is clean, so that if you're the one who's actually generating the marketing content, it's going to be viable and legal, right? Because we have, GDPR and all the fun stuff we have to worry about. So if you haven't laid the groundwork to do any of that, VDP might not be in your future.
Well, there we go. And it is, you touch on the hot topic of the day, of course, which we'll come on to in a second. One of the joys of doing this series of interviews at the Lighthouse is I've never looked as far back really as to where the problem started.
Yeah.
And the fact that largely, not totally, but largely, they've never really been solved. And what
Yeah.
you've just said there with, oh, don't worry, because AI will fix it, that suggests that there's a bunch of people that are just waiting for somebody to fix their mess.
Yeah.
It's like a teenager saying, "Oh, well, I'll do the washing up when I run out of pots," that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Or somebody will come along and do it for me. Looking forward briefly in the last few minutes we've got together, Pat. You mentioned AI.
Yeah.
I've got two views of AI. One is it's a really useful tool. It is an artificial intelligence that really has been around since the 50s. Alan
Oh,
Turing in
yeah.
the UK was the creator of
Absolutely.
artificial intelligence
Yeah.
as it was. I know generative AI has come along in the last couple of years and changed that and brought it to most people's attention. But on the other side of that argument, you have the AI, which is actual intelligence. That's kind of hopefully you and me. So
Yeah.
how we use this to make our worlds better. What do you do?
So I use a lot of AI tools.
Hmm.
As they started, as the initial GPT hype hit the market, we started looking at it carefully to figure out where it made sense for us to use it as a helper and where
Hmm.
it didn't. We were being asked to do some things that, frankly, we believed we knew we could do by hand. We knew we could do with Excel macros, but we started to investigate how to write prompts for a GPT engine that might take us further faster, how we
Okay.
could analyze large data sets faster to provide actionable intelligence, another AI, into the market. So over the last few years, we've been gathering tools in our bucket and practicing with them and learning how to use them. And so I work a lot, as I said, with Ryan Maccabee, and Ryan also has a side business in real estate. So
Hmm.
that's his sandbox, right? Because we'll learn about a tool, and he'll go, "Let me try that over here." And see what happens. And then, wow, look, I'm getting 30% more hits on the real estate website, and I'm getting more views of this kind of content and that kind of content, and then we can analyze it. And AI is really good at that. And on my side, so weirdly, and I don't recommend this highly to anyone, the family, we own 2 restaurants, and so we have a lot of data.
Hmm.
And what you learn about data, and it doesn't matter whether it's in restaurants or insurance companies or marketing companies, or you're an agency, you wind up with a lot of data, right? We're gathering data all the time. And if you're a print shop, there's just terabytes and petabytes of data on your shop floor.
Hmm.
Nobody can analyze it. No
No.
person has the one time, two inclination, and three, I want to say, the right box to
Yep.
know how to know what to do with the data, right? I mean, how do you analyze it? How you analyze it matters, right?
Hmm.
So, what we started doing was looking at hybrid approaches, and that drove me into the very interesting thing to be doing at my age, which is going back to school. So I literally started to think about things that I want to, and my sandbox is the restaurant data,
Yeah.
because weirdly, restaurant data does not look a whole lot different than print
Yeah.
PSV data or any other business data. You've got inputs, you've got expenses, you've got employees, you've got things you want to match
Yeah.
problems in data with maybe who's causing it, right? I mean, there's a lot of things you want to do, but you got to be sensitive, right? I don't want an AI engine to be analyzing my data and having it send an email to an employee to say, "Hey, you did this," right? That's not how we work. And
No.
in the class that I'm taking, what has been a really significant part of the education has been the ethics of using AI, and
Okay.
the hybrid nature of good use of
Mm.
AI. Think of it as good trouble, right?
Mm.
What's the thing that you can do with AI that is going to move you forward, but not violate the rights of your employees, not
Yeah.
violate the rights of your customers, not not be too draconian about how you approach using that data to make business decisions, right? There should
Sure.
always be a human element to it. And every one of the professors in the modules is emphasizing that. And yet I'm getting that, and as I'm kind of building things for my sandbox, and hopefully I'm going to finish this class with a process that's going to save me 2 to 3 hours of time every week, right? Of for each restaurant, analyzing the data to know if our expense ratio to our is we're generating the right profits, we're making the right spends, we're buying the right stuff. Because right
Yep.
now the staff is doing their best, but they can't hold on to a
Yeah.
month's worth of data in their head, right? And
No.
our kitchen managers are brilliant. Our front of house managers, they do their best. We kept them all through COVID. We never
Hmm.
lost them. We got into debt with the government, but we kept everybody. And at the end of the day, I want to make their job better. I want to make their life better as well, right? And I don't want to have to be saying, well, no, we can't buy that bottle of whiskey right now because there's no
Mm.
money in the bank. I want to be able to say, okay, if we buy that bottle of whiskey and we sell it for this much, we know that this is going to be our profit margin, right? So,
Yep.
oh, gee, there's a deal on a case. Let me buy the case, right? You do the same thing in a print shop. You buy your consumables ahead. You buy your print your substrate supplies ahead. You decide when to pay for maintenance and when to train your people to do it yourself. You make decisions about your physical location and when it's time to move, when it's time to
Hmm.
upgrade, when it's time to build out. Data helps you with that, and that's where AI plays a role. But that's not the only place it plays. It plays every vendor you work with right now, if you are a printer, is using AI somewhere, somehow in your life,
Yeah.
whether you know it
Yep.
or not. They're
Yep.
using software companies have become quite adept at being smart for using AI to help them do maintenance and problem resolution, to develop net new code to solve new problems, and to do it faster, to get it to market faster, to help you faster.
Hundred
Hardware
percent.
vendors are doing the exact same thing to make what are really smarter decisions about how the paper transport actually works, how the DFE communicates to print heads or to fusers or to plate makers in CTP environments, how to use AI to make the best decisions about color against a substrate, against a job, which I know color experts say their eye is better than anybody else's, and I'm not discounting that, but sometimes you need to move at the speed of light. And so the data in the color, the data about the substrate, the data about the print technology that you're going to use, and the digital front end or the physical front end, the CTP that's going to be used, it can resolve those things so much faster and let your
Sure.
smart people solve the bigger, more complex problems. So let it do the bulk of the work, and then let your smart people look at it and go, I want to adjust that cyan just a little bit because this customer likes their stuff to look bluer, or this customer likes their stuff to look a little more, yellowy or magenta or purpley or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So that's where people come into it, and people become essential.
Yeah.
AI is a helper.
Yeah.
AI is not the goal.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. And we've sort of lost. Well, we haven't gained, I would say, the full knowledge of what AI can actually do for businesses. You've touched on it brilliantly there in terms of all of the back office functions
Yeah.
that it can help with. Most of us, and me included, we're still making pretty pictures of ourselves and putting them on the internet. Because it's new and it's shiny and we haven't seen it before.
And if you
So
look at my pictures on the internet, you can tell I don't do that.
but you see my point, and I think
Yeah.
until but in that is the fear that the media, if you like, have created about, oh, AI is going to take your job. No, AI is going to help your job.
What every class I've taken in my AI run always begins with one idea. It's the most common in AI education. AI is not going to take your job, but somebody who understands how to use it will.
Exactly, exactly. Wise words, Pat McGrew, as always. Listen, we're standing on top of the lighthouse here
Yeah.
on Print Island with a view of the world. We've got 1 minute, and I'm going to hold you to this 1 minute. Tell me what you want the world to look like in the next 40 years.
I want us to be smarter. I want it to be a world where the value of print is well understood as the medium that you use to most cognitively learn. that you recognize the value proposition of every technology that comes along. And I want printers to get off their stubbornness toadstool and start embracing technologies that will allow them to treat their employees better and give them richer careers in print as we try to serve mankind with print. Because I
Wow.
still think it's the best way to do it.
Yeah, no, well, I agree, and you know, with those wise words, I'm delighted to have you on today. It's an absolute pleasure. It's an age since I've seen you, so it's lovely to do
Yeah,
this. Can't wait to see you in person again somewhere soon.
yeah.
But for today, Pat McGrew, legend of the print industry and brilliant writer. Will never forget that. Thank you for joining me in the Lighthouse here on Print Island.
Thank you, Richard.